Law Enforcement for Youth is a local nonprofit organization that has been in the community since 1999, began with the Pig Bowl. We're going to talk about that in a moment. Welcome to People, Places, and Politics. I'm Patty Milne, your host. My guest today is Nathan Wuerch. And Nathan is the chair of Law Enforcement for Youth. You've been the chair since 2006?
2006, yeah.
And you also work at Oregon State Credit Union. That's your real job, but you're so very actively involved in Law Enforcement for Youth. Sometimes that probably feels like your real job. But Nathan, I'm really glad you could be here today, and I did bring with me a couple of the brochures that talk about the numerous programs that Law Enforcement for Youth oversees. The Shop with a Cop, as I mentioned. Yes, youth equipment and sports safety. There's an auction coming up. And also I really want to talk a little later about SOSA, which is Striking Out Substance Abuse, formerly known as Striking Out Meth in Marion Polk counties. Give us a little background on Law Enforcement for Youth, and then we'll get into these various programs.
Perfect. First off, thank you very much for having me out. Law Enforcement for Youth started in, precepts of Law Enforcement for Youth started in '99 with two deputies from Marion County, Steve Plansky and John Gadberry, and they decided to, they wanted to play football, but they didn't just want to play football, they wanted to raise money for kids. And so the two of them got together on their coffee breaks, and which you don't get very many of. But they got together and said, okay, how do we put together a football game and then raise money for kids? And so they came up with what's called the Pig Bowl. It's a full contact football game. And in 6 weeks' time, they started raising money and doing practices, and had the first Pig Bowl game in December. That was affectionately known as the Mud Bowl because, as you could tell with Oregon winters and all the rain, the fields weren't in the greatest conditions, but they were able to raise a little bit underneath $5,000 that first year in less than 6 weeks to help kids. And they did that for several more years. They originally had done that with the Boys and Girls Club, and the Boys and Girls Club ended up being the recipients of all the funds. And after several years of them talking and people getting involved, people in the community started coming to them and saying, hey, can you help this organization? Can you help that organization? What's there a way? And they didn't have a mechanism to do that. So they decided to involve some other law enforcement agencies in that, and then some community members. And that's how I got involved. Working for Oregon State Credit Union, being in the finance world, I know a little bit about numbers, not a lot, but a little. And they said, we need somebody who can understand financials and can help us raise money and keep things on track, for all the legal requirements. And so in 2003, we formed our own nonprofit, Law Enforcement for Youth. And since then, it's been event and program and you name it, as you had mentioned, the different things that have kind of come underneath the LEY umbrella.
And then, of course, my association with Law Enforcement for Youth and you began with Striking Out Meth in Marion Polk counties, and this will be, by the way, our 10th year of doing this celebration event. And so I've been familiar with many of your programs and the great service, the focus on kids, disadvantaged kids and low-income kids, and creating those partnerships and better understanding between kids and law enforcement. So that tied right in really nicely with our Striking Out Meth event. And again, we want to talk about the Shop with a Cop and the equipment plan and all, but as a little background for our viewers, bringing that Striking Out Meth, and that's the short version of the full name, under law enforcement for youth now, that just happened over the last few months, it gives us much more ability to bring more participants, more sponsors, more awareness to, again, these relationships between law enforcement, people involved, however it may be with law enforcement, and helping kids to stay away from the adverse effects of substance abuse, hence part of our name change, striking out substance abuse, known as SOSA, and also celebrating all the community efforts around keeping kids healthy and making good life choices. So why don't, if it's okay with you, Nathan, why don't we just start here and work our way across this little brochure, starting with Shop with a Cop. Talk a little bit about the number of children you're able to reach. How does it work? I know that happens particularly around Christmas time, so that people can start to think about getting involved in that.
You betcha.
A little later in the year.
One of the things that Law Enforcement for Youth, as I had mentioned before, we had originally done the Pig Bowl. And then we had started out with these small grant programs, mini grant programs, and program grants to organizations to help kids play in sports or to do a theater camp or programs that are out there that needed funds to do some sort of event. One of the programs that actually had come to us that had started with Oregon State Police was Shop with a Cop. The two people that were running it at the time, it's 10 years ago now. It looks like 2005 is when that came underneath the LEY umbrella. They were retiring from Oregon State Police, but they wanted the event to keep going on. And every year you had about 100 kids that would show up and shop with police officers and showing that positive role model aspect. A lot of times kids that are low income or at-risk situations, they only see law enforcement as a negative, and we wanted to show them the positive side of law enforcement. So that first year we took, instead of 100 kids, I think it was like 150, 160 kids shopping. And then over the years it's grown. And that second year was 200 kids, and then 300 kids, and then 400 kids. And this last year we did 513 kids, partnering with Walmart and generous donors in the community. We could not do anything that we do without the generous donors in the community. And every year the kids come from different agencies, whether that's a foster parent program or the housing authorities or school resource officers that are referred to us. And we partner them with the police officer. And this last year we had over 100 law enforcement personnel there, 500 kids. They go through Walmart and they get paired off and they go shopping for Christmas presents. Some of the Christmas presents, they get toys for themselves. And then we get the other kids that come through, and we had a gentleman a couple years ago that is probably about 10 years old, and he came in and he went straight back for the car seat section. And the officer kind of looked at him and went, "What are you doing? You know, we're supposed to be Christmas shopping." And the kid looked at the officer and said, "I want to get a car seat for my little sister so that she's safe when we're driving down the road." And we hear those stories over and over. And the officer is like, "Okay, that's fine. I'm buying the car seat. Let's go get you something." We had a little girl 3 years ago, right after the Sandy Hook thing over on the East Coast. She went back to the arts and crafts section, and a lady officer that was with her had asked, "Are you into arts? Do you like, that type of thing?" "No, but I want to make sure that they know that we care." And so you hear those stories. It's not just about, taking a kid and getting him a Christmas present. It's about that positive side of law enforcement. And these kids, they are so selfless, because they don't have a lot, but they're thinking about other people.
Yeah, isn't that great?
It is.
That's great. So talk a little bit now about the Youth Equipment and Sports Safety Program.
One of the things with Law Enforcement for Youth, we help low-income, at-risk, and medically challenged kids. And several years ago, our board sat down, of which Patty is now one of our board members. But pre you joining the board, we sat down and said that, kids that are in sports technically are at risk. There's so many things that are out there. And so we wanted to be able to provide opportunities for youth in sports, whether that's football or baseball or basketball, swimming, you name it, to have the proper safety equipment that's available, proper education from coaches, and so we partnered with Schutz Sports, which is a national manufacturer for safety equipment on the football, baseball, softball side, excuse me, to provide equipment grants to organizations, whether that be the Little League or Pop Warner or the Boys and Girls Club or whatever organization that applied for it. And we were able to grant equipment out to these organizations. And then 3 years ago, we sat down and said, okay, we're making progress with safety equipment, but what about the stuff that you can't prevent? And as most people know, concussions are one of those things that it's a hot topic right now. And the board said, okay, what can we do to help? You can't prevent a concussion, but how do you manage it? And how do you recognize it? And how do you evaluate an athlete when it happens right there on the field or on the court? And we came up with what's called the sideline kit. It's a concussion...
Which is this little brochure.
It's a concussion management system that helps evaluate an athlete if and when a suspected concussion occurs. It gives training for coaches and athletic personnel to recognize the signs or symptoms. It's one of those things that helps with a progressive return to play policy so that a kid may have sustained some sort of hit. They go to the doctor says, yep, they're good to go, give them a couple days rest. But what does that mean? And so there's a very specific, return to play policy that has been adopted by many different teams and associations out there that, as we continue to roll this out and then provide the awareness. I think that is the key thing for both the athletes, their parents, their teachers, their coaches. And it's nothing that we created. It's taking a bunch of different things, putting them all together in one kit that we can provide to any sports team for less than $3 an athlete.
That's great. And you might go ahead and mention the cost of the kit and how that works with a whole team. But the thing that catches my attention in this brochure is it improves athletic safety for less than $2.67 per athlete.
Yep.
That's a good.
It really is. The cost of a kit, it's $79.99. It'll serve a team of 30. So if you have a basketball team, you could use it for 3 years. If you have a kids football team, it's going to take care of it for the year. If it's baseball, you can usually you have somewhere 10 to 15 kids on a team. You can use it for 2 years in a row. And what we do is we put the kids through a series of tests called the King-Devick test, which is used by U.S. lacrosse and hockey, and they come up with a baseline test. If there's something that occurs on the field or the playing court and the athlete, somebody sees that they have a concussion or they're presenting symptoms, we pull them off from the field of play, give them this baseline test. If there's some issues, then we remove them from play until that they can be evaluated by a medical professional. This is definitely not a medical thing.
Do talk about that this is very separate from making sure that these children get immediately to medical care if necessary.
Exactly.
But it gives the coaches and other adults the tools they need to help assess. Is that
Most
accurate?
Definitely, yeah. Most of your high school sports, they've got professional trainers on the sidelines. They've got EMT personnel on the sidelines or on the court that can make those decisions. This is just a tool to use to help evaluate. Do we think that there has been a concussion that's been sustained? And then here's the information you want to relay to medical personnel so that they can get treated properly. And then once they've been treated, what do they do? Do they just go back to practice, or is there something that they need to go through, a process that they have to go through? And that's the return to play. The Oregon Athletic Trainer Society has endorsed it. We have an attorney, David Crackey, who helped co-legislate Max and Jenna's law, who's endorsed it. And so it's just one of those tools that we want to get out there. $2.67
Per
per
athlete.
athlete,
That's,
which
yeah.
is something that you can't, it's priceless.
Good. All right. So I'm keeping an eye here on the clock because you started by talking about the Pig Bowl, and I don't know how much time you want to spend on that because it sounds like there may be a little transition there.
Pig Bowl has transitioned a little bit over the ages with a lot of the guys getting older and a lot of our emergency personnel being involved in a multitude of things. It wasn't just a football game anymore. And so Law Enforcement for Youth looked at different ways to, and that was our major fundraiser every year. But we looked at, okay, based on people's ages, based on the variety of things, and just the logistical side of coordinating 2 football teams and equipment that went into that.
And equipment.
And equipment. We decided to look for different avenues to raise funds. We've got our auction coming up on April 4th, Saturday, April 4th, at the Salem Conference Center. And that's one of our major fundraisers now every year. So it's been a couple years since the Pig Bowl's been around, and until at some point somebody wants to, revisit that. Yeah.
Maybe as a teaser, we could say there's been talk about having doing a baseball.
We are looking towards
Just a teaser.
Yep, just a teaser at doing a Pig Bowl baseball game. So a little less contact. So for those people that are interested in that, as another way to raise funds for LEY's programs.
Good. Well, let's move to Shoot for the Stars auction. It's a
Yes.
dinner auction and also a poker tournament. And talk about that, Nathan. I've been to it. It's fabulous. Listen closely while Nathan talks about it. It's really a lot of fun. You're going to want to know how and where to get tickets, and be sure to attend.
Yeah. So Shoot for the Stars benefit. Law Enforcement for Youth has been doing auctions for 5 or 6 years. 4 years ago, we partnered with Salem Kaiser Education Foundation, and they have been an absolutely fantastic partner. As you know, Salem is a rather small community, and there's all sorts of events that are always, and they're all very well put together, but we're all pulling from the same pot, so to speak. And so we sat down with Karina and said, let's partner together. And I think that partnerships are one of those ways
It is.
to move things forward, because you have a combined outcome that's beneficial to multiple organizations. So we have a silent auction and a live auction. We have some of the most fantastic autographed memorabilia in the Pacific Northwest.
Give some examples.
For instance, this year we've got a team-signed Ducks helmet from the Rose Bowl, which is absolutely fantastic, as much as it hurts me to say that. We also have a team-signed Oregon State Beavers helmet.
There you go.
Which that prides me to say that. We actually had one of our kids that's involved with Law Enforcement for Youth, one of our board members' kids, that went down to each of the games and physically got all these signatures. We have anything from golf pieces from the greats. We've got boxing stuff. We've got Patriots stuff. We've got Seattle Seahawks stuff. You name it, it's going to be there at the auction. Not just autographed memorabilia, but we've got trips to Mexico and to Hawaii, and smaller silent auction packages. Anything from $10 up to whatever you want to spend your money on, we'll definitely do it. We have go ahead.
Should I fess up? Last year, I bought one of my grandsons a Mercedes. Now, what you need to know, though, is my grandson last year was just turning 2. This year he'll be turning 3. So we're talking one of these, small ones. but nonetheless, so that's part of the variety of items
It is very much
that are
so.
available, and all kinds of isn't there like artwork and oh gosh, I bid on so many things and didn't win, except for I did get that Mercedes. And we did also signed baseballs, like I say, the helmets, jerseys, the trips. There's everything at this auction, and it's just a lot of fun at the convention center. And
It's a lot of fun. It's on Saturday, April 4th, as I had mentioned. If you go to www.shootforthestars.com or shootforthestarsbenefit.org, so either .com or .org, you can either register yourself, it's $50 a person, or a table of 8 is $350.
And I might say it could be a little confusing if you go to the Law Enforcement for Youth website and then go for the Shoot for the Stars. I think you're getting last year's information. So go straight to Shoot for the Stars auction and you'll get right where you need to be.
Yes.
Yes.
Yep. And that's an update that with Law Enforcement for Youth, we are an all-volunteer board. There are no paid board members at all, and there's no paid staff. It's one of those things that I joke with people that I work for Oregon State Credit Union. That's my full-time daily job, but Law Enforcement for Youth is my full-time unpaid job. But I absolutely love what I do on a daily basis, being
great.
involved with it.
So let's take the last couple of minutes here to talk about this transition of striking out meth in Marion Polk counties to striking out substance abuse and coming under the umbrella of Law Enforcement for Youth.
Yeah. A couple years ago, there was some discussion about this event that LAY has been part of
Yes.
since
The very
maybe the first year or maybe the second year.
Maybe second, but you've been fantastic supporters and participants since practically the beginning.
Practically
if not the
beginning, yes.
If not the beginning.
And we had those conversations. Steve Plansky, our executive director, and yourself sat down and had some conversations about how can this continue, and how can we make it bigger and better. Not that it's not already big and awesome, but what small refinements can we do? And while meth is a terrible, terrible drug, there are a lot of other things out there. And so we looked at over many months of discussion of can we broaden the horizon, and instead of just having a one-day event, let's look at an annual program. Can we go out and can we educate the kids in the school? Can we, give some sort of, teaching opportunities and involve law enforcement personnel, involve the community, and that back and forth aspect of things. And instead of just having this one-day event, make it a celebration of the entire year's program.
Yes. So instead of previously, striking out meth really was celebrating all these community activities and efforts, such as Law Enforcement for Youth. Now it is the effort, along with other efforts that take place year-round. So that's going to be good. And we've had, over the years, wonderful sponsors and good sponsorships, but this opens up to the opportunity to expand those opportunities for us so that we can do bigger and better things, but also the nonprofit status that we hope will entice sponsors to either step up their sponsorship level, or those, times are still tough for a lot of businesses and organizations, and this will give that added tax benefit that is really necessary for a lot of people to support these kinds of efforts.
Yep. For, I believe it's $25.
Correct.
We can sponsor what's our Bleacher Buddy program. And with that Bleacher Buddy program, it allows a child to come in. They get admission to the park. They get a T-shirt. a baseball and a meal, and then they get to participate in all the events that go on,
Right.
you know,
Right.
that evening as well.
Right.
So whether it's $25 that an individual can donate, or $1,000 that a business is looking at donating, or 5,000 or 10,000, there's all sorts of different levels that you can look at participating in. And with that, you know, aspect of being a nonprofit, your donations can be tax deductible.
Right, and previously the sponsorship was that day. Now the sponsorship is year-round.
It's year-round.
Year-round
Absolutely.
and combined with Law Enforcement for Youth, which is such a great name and a great organization. What else would you like to share, Nathan, with the viewers? And also, again, go over the contact information for Law Enforcement for Youth generally, and also all of these activities.
All the different activities.
All the different activities.
So for Law Enforcement for Youth, if you want to visit our website, it's www.lawenforcementforyouth.com or .org. Let's go with .org. .org is maintained a little bit more often. So lawenforcementforyouth.org. Phone number is 503-363-5437. If you contact us, there's a list of our board members that are on there. Or you can do info@lawenforcementforyouth.com or .org. Auctions coming up, as I had mentioned.
April 4th.
April 4th. Shootforthestarsbenefit.org. The Sideline Kit, which is our youth equipment and sports safety, is the sidelinekit.org. So there's really a multitude of ways that you can get a hold of us. You know, we can go from there too. Whether that's an individual that wants to help out with something, we're always looking for volunteers. We're always looking for people that want to be involved with the program. And we truly appreciate, Patty, you know, your willingness to, you know, step up and help reorganize the SOSA event, the
Yes.
Striking Out Substance
SOSA.
Abuse, which is coming up on July 31st.
Yes, thank you for saying that. And now is the time to inquire also. You can go to these websites that Nathan has mentioned to get information on sponsoring SOSA and also participating. So, and information is just now going out to organizations and individuals to get involved with SOSA.
Yeah.
So, great. Anything else? We have just a second left that you'd like to share?
I appreciate you for what you've done in your community, and I appreciate you inviting me out here today to talk a little bit more about what Law Enforcement for Youth does in helping youth in our communities.
Well, thank you, Nathan, for your dedication and all these efforts over the years to Law Enforcement for Youth and these activities and programs that go along there. It's great to serve the kids of this community.
Thanks.
And recognize our law enforcement. So thank you for joining us. This is People, Places, and Politics.